He's alive. Don't put him in there. Amaka burst into the bright, cold living room, her black and white maid uniform still damp with sweat from her run. On the marble floor, a long wooden casket sat open like a hungry mouth. Beside it, on a white-covered viewing table, lay Williams, Billionaire CEO, and the man who had once rescued her from the street. His eyes were closed, his skin looked pale, his hands were folded neatly on his chest. Everyone wore black, crying. Cynthia, his wife, stood near the casket, face hard and shiny with tears. The family doctor, Dr. Jeremy Benson, clenched a clipboard and nodded at two men to lift the body. Namdi, Williams's younger brother, stood frozen, chest heaving, whispering, "Brother, please." Amaka ran straight to the table. Cynthia threw an arm out to block her. "Get out! Who let the maid in?" Namdi stepped forward. He gently pushed Cynthia aside. "Let her speak." Amaka's voice shook. "Sir, there's no time. Please just watch." And then, with every eye in the room locked on her, Amaka lifted her right hand high and slapped Williams across the cheek. The sound cracked through the room. The mourners screamed. The men moved to grab her, and Williams's chest jerked in that same moment. 2 hours earlier, Lagos hummed like a drum. Harmattan wind blew white dust across the estate's black gates, and the air felt dry inside throats and eyes. Amaka was coming from the market with bread and milk when she saw 3 cars outside the mansion and a cluster of neighbors whispering by the fence. "Sorry, one woman said, eyes wide. "We just heard. They say Williams is dead." Amaka dropped the bread. "Dead? He chaired a board meeting yesterday." "Madam Cynthia called this morning," another neighbor added. "The doctor confirmed it. They're preparing him inside." Amaka didn't think. She ran. Her mind flashed with fragments, Williams handing her a warm meal the day he hired her, telling her, "You can sleep here tonight, not under the bridge." And then, one quiet evening, lowering his voice, "Amaka, if anything strange ever happens to me, no sickness, no crash, no warning, and they say I'm dead, do one thing, slap me. Do you hear? Slap me hard." She hadn't laughed. His eyes had been too serious. Now she sprinted through the gate, past a gardener who shouted, "Amaka, stop." She pushed open the big front doors and stepped into a room that looked like a perfect picture. White roses, black clothes, shiny marble, except everything felt wrong. There was no priest, no cooling unit humming, no law officers, just fast movement and a casket waiting to be closed. Dr. Jeremy Benson scribbled on a paper and said, "Let's not delay." Amaka saw Namdi first. His eyes were red. "Amaka?" he said, surprised. "They said you weren't home." "I heard at the gate," she panted. "Please, sir, please wait." Amaka stepped closer. She stared at Williams, the calm face, the neat hands, the shiny black shoes. She touched his wrist. His skin was cool. The room was too cold. She noticed windows cracked open, Harmattan air sliding in. A memory sparked. "Windows," Williams had said once. Voice low. "In Harmattan, an hour of cold air can trick my body. It looks like death. I fall still. No breath anyone can see. Only a hard shock can pull me back." Amaka's heart hammered. An hour? Had it been an hour? She looked at the windows again, curtains trembling in the breeze. Cynthia stepped in front of her, eyes burning. "Move back. Dr. Benson has confirmed the time of death. We will not embarrass this family." Amaka looked at the doctor. "When did he last breathe, sir?" Dr. Benson didn't answer. He only lifted his chin to the men by the casket. "Proceed." Namdi raised a hand. "Doctor, wait. Why is there no official report from the hospital? Why here?" Cynthia snapped. "Because I am his wife, and he wanted a quiet passing." "Are you questioning me on the worst day of my life?" A low murmur rolled through the relatives. An aunt dabbed her eyes with a black lace handkerchief. A cousin shifted, uneasy. Amaka caught Namdi's eyes. She spoke softly, careful and clear. "Sir, yesterday he was fine. He laughed at dinner. No headache, no cough, no fever. Why is he gone today?" Namdi swallowed. "That is the question keeping me alive." The men lifted Williams by the shoulders and knees. The casket creaked. Amaka stepped forward on instinct. "He's alive." "Don't put him in there," she cried. Cynthia lunged, trying to block her. "Get her out now." but Namdi moved faster. He put a firm hand on Cynthia's arm and eased her aside. "If there is even a 1% chance," he said through his teeth, "we will not bury my brother breathing." The men hesitated. Their hands trembled. Dr. Benson cleared his throat. "This is nonsense." Amaka leaned over Williams. Her hands shook. The room seemed to hold its breath. She heard the wind whispering at the windows, felt the cold dust on her skin. She bent close to his ear and whispered, "Sir, if you can hear me, forgive me for what I'm about to do." She straightened. Amaka lifted her palm. For a heartbeat, the room slowed. In that heartbeat, she saw everything Williams had given her. A bed, a job, a name badge with Amaka spelled right, a small bank card for her savings. She also saw the quick look on Cynthia's face, a flicker, like a secret catching fire. And she saw Namdi's jaw set, as if he already knew something was wrong. Then the slap. It was not cruel. It was urgent. The sound cracked across the marble like a gunshot. Cynthia screamed, "You stupid girl!" The doctor shouted, "Restrain her." Hands reached for Amaka, and then the little thing that changes everything. Williams's chest twitched. His throat clicked. A raspy cough climbed up from a well that had looked bone dry. Time snapped apart. Namdi's eyes went wide. Did you see that?" "Coincidence," Dr. Benson barked, voice shaking. Amaka leaned in, eyes wet. "Sir, please, come back." Another cough, stronger. A tremor moved through Williams's fingers, breaking the perfect stillness of folded hands. One finger pressed the other, slow and stubborn. His eyelids fluttered as if fighting a heavy door. Someone cried out, "God!" Cynthia stumbled back, face drained of color. For one raw second, her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Amaka picked up a water bottle from the tray and brought it close to his lips. Voice soft and sure, the way you speak to someone finding the shore after a storm. "Small sip, sir, please." Williams's lips parted. A whisper scraped out, dry as dust. "Water." The room exploded, shouts, sobs, chairs scraping. Namdi grabbed his brother's shoulders and eased him up as if lifting a newborn. The men who had reached for Amaka now froze, hands in the air, like statues that no longer knew what to be. Amaka tilted the bottle. One careful sip, then another. Color crept back into Williams's face, only a little, but enough to break the spell that had held the house like ice. He blinked. Slowly. He looked at Amaka first, then at Namdi, and finally at the woman in black who stood near the open casket, shaking like a leaf in dry wind. His voice was still a whisper, but it carried. "Why? Are the windows open?" Silence. Even the curtains seemed to stop moving. Cynthia's fingers tightened around her clutch bag. Dr. Benson stared at the floor. Namdi turned his head, very slowly, toward the cracked windows and back to Cynthia. "Who opened them?" Cynthia licked her lips. I don't know. The staff, maybe." The air was stuffy. Amaka's eyes went to the window latches. The dust smudges were fresh. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. William swallowed and tried to steady his breath. He looked at Amaka again. In his tired eyes there was something like a secret shared. "Good girl," he whispered. "You remembered." Before anyone could ask what he meant, a sharp metallic clatter hit the floor. All heads turned. Cynthia's clutch had slipped. Papers had spilled thick, official papers with bold stamps and seals, property deeds, company documents, a power of attorney letter with a fresh signature date. Namdi bent, picked up the top sheet, and read. His face lost all softness. He raised his eyes to Cynthia. She swallowed hard. The harmattan wind pushed at the curtains again. Namdi lifted the paper high so everyone could see the red seal. "Cynthia," he said, voice shaking with anger. "What have you done?" The room felt smaller now. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Namdi, his hand trembling as he held up the papers that had spilled from Cynthia's clutch bag. "What have you done?" he repeated, his voice no longer calm. Cynthia's lips quivered. "Namdi, please, it's not what you think." Before she could finish, Williams coughed again. It was weak but real. Amaka helped him sit upright, sliding her arm behind his back. He looked pale, drenched in cold sweat, his breath short but steady. Namdi turned to him. "Brother, rest. Don't try to talk." But Williams raised a shaking hand. "No, let her speak," he rasped. His voice was rough, like dry wood splitting in fire. Let her tell them what she did. Cynthia froze. For a moment, she looked like she didn't recognize the man sitting before her. Then she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Williams, you were gone, she said quickly. You stopped breathing. Your body went cold. I called the doctor, he confirmed it. I was only doing what a wife should do. Dr. Benson shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward the door. Williams's gaze darkened. Then tell me, he said slowly, why were the windows open? The room went silent again. Even the ticking wall clock seemed to hold its breath. Amaka looked from one face to another, searching for a hint of truth. Namdi folded his arms, jaw clenched. Cynthia stammered. It must have been the maid. Amaka stepped forward. That's a lie. I closed those windows last night before I went to bed. Namdi turned sharply. Cynthia. His tone was low and dangerous. You knew his condition. You knew the Harmattan air could stop his heart. Did you open them? Her shoulders shook. I just needed some fresh air. Williams stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. No, Cynthia. You wanted me gone. Dr. Benson's clipboard slipped from his hands, hitting the floor with a sharp clap. The papers scattered. Among them was a sealed envelope. Namdi picked it up, tore it open, and what he saw made his face twist in disgust. Inside were transfer documents, legal papers, showing the movement of millions from Williams' group accounts into a private one, owned by Cynthia and Dr. Benson. Namdi read the name aloud, his voice echoing. Cynthia Williams and Jeremy Benson. The relatives gasped, Cynthia's face drained of color. No, that's not real. He tricked me. Jeremy said it was insurance. Amaka's hands trembled at her sides. Insurance for what? To bury him alive? Cynthia turned to Dr. Benson, eyes wide with fear. Jeremy, say something. But the doctor took a slow step back, sweat rolling down his forehead. I don't know what she's talking about, he muttered, voice cracking. This is madness. Williams's tone hardened. Enough. He slowly stood, his legs shaking beneath him. Namdi and Amaka rushed to steady him, but he waved them off. He looked at Cynthia with quiet heartbreak. When I married you, you had nothing. I gave you everything, but you still wanted more. Cynthia's eyes filled with tears. Williams, I didn't mean to. He cut her off. You opened that window to kill me. The family members began whispering. Some looked away in shame. Others stared at Cynthia like she was a stranger. Cynthia's breathing grew uneven. Her mascara ran down her cheeks as she dropped to her knees. Please, I was pushed into it. Jeremy said he loved me. He said if you died, I'd inherit everything. I swear, I didn't want to. Williams's voice thundered. You would have buried me alive because of a lie. Cynthia covered her face and wept. Forgive me. Please forgive me. Namdi turned toward Dr. Benson. You'll answer for this. The doctor tried to move toward the door, but two security guards alerted by the noise blocked his path. Williams pointed a shaking finger. Call the police. Cynthia's scream echoed through the hall as the guards seized the doctor. No, don't take him. I'll tell you everything. Just don't. But it was too late. The guards dragged Jeremy away as relatives whispered in disbelief. Williams lowered himself back into the chair. Amaka knelt beside him, pressing a handkerchief into his palm. He looked at her, and a faint smile crossed his tired face. You remembered my words, he said softly. Amaka nodded, tears shining in her eyes. Yes, sir. You told me that if something ever happened suddenly, no sickness, no warning, I should slap you. I didn't understand why, but I promised. Williams's voice trembled with emotion. You saved my life, Amaka. You saved me from being buried alive. Moments later, the police arrived. Cynthia was still on her knees, her sobs filling the mansion. She tried to cling to Williams's feet, but he pulled back, eyes full of sorrow rather than anger. I won't have you arrested, he said quietly. But you'll face the law for what you and your doctor did. Cynthia looked up, stunned. You won't send me to prison. Williams shook his head. Prison isn't the only punishment. You'll live knowing you almost killed the man who loved you. As the officers led Dr. Benson out, Williams noticed the papers still in Namdi's hand, the documents of stolen properties, signed with forged seals. He took them, his jaw tightening. All this time, he said bitterly, I thought I was building a home. Turns out I was building a grave. That night, the mansion was silent. The guests had left. The casket was gone. Only the sound of the wind outside filled the halls. Amaka stood by the window, looking out at the stars. Her uniform was stained with tears, her face pale from everything she had seen. Williams entered slowly, now wearing a robe. "You should rest," he said gently. "I can't," she replied. "Every time I close my eyes, I see you lying there." He smiled faintly. "It's over now." But Amaka shook her head. "No, sir. It's just beginning. Someone who loved you tried to kill you. How can that ever be over?" Williams sighed. "You're right. But there's something I've learned today." He looked at her with tired eyes. "Loyalty doesn't come from blood or marriage. It comes from the heart." Older, Amaka looked down, shy. "You gave me hope when I had none. I couldn't let you go like that." For a long moment, they stood there in silence, the harmattan wind brushing through the curtains. Then Williams said softly, "Tomorrow, I'll make sure you get everything you need to start school. You told me you wanted to study computer science, didn't you?" Amaka blinked in surprise. "Yes, but sir, I can't." "You can," he interrupted. "And you will. You've earned that chance." A small smile broke through her tears. "Thank you, sir." Williams turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. "Amaka," he said. She looked up. "Next time someone says I'm dead," he said with a hint of laughter in his voice, "don't slap me too hard." She laughed through her tears. "No promises, sir." The house that had nearly become a tomb now echoed with the first sound of laughter in days. But somewhere across the city, in a small apartment filled with regret and darkness, Cynthia Williams sat alone, her mind unraveling as the reality of her fall began to sink in. Morning sunlight crept into the mansion, sliding across the marble floor, where, only hours before, Williams's lifeless body had lain. The house was quiet now, yet the silence felt strange, like peace wearing borrowed clothes. William sat on the living room couch, sipping warm tea. His body was weak, but his mind was sharper than ever. Across from him sat Namdi, his younger brother, who still looked shaken. "She tried to bury you alive, brother," Namdi said softly. "If Amaka hadn't come." Williams raised a hand. "Let's not speak in ifs. I'm alive. That's what matters." Namdi sighed, eyes narrowing. "And Cynthia, what will you do about her?" Williams stared into his cup. Steam curled upward like a ghost. "I haven't decided," he said quietly. The scandal spreads. By noon, the news had escaped the mansion. Someone from the crowd outside had recorded the moment Williams opened his eyes, and the clip spread online like wildfire. Headline: "Billionaire declared dead wakes up minutes before burial. Saved by Maid." The video showed Amaka's trembling hand landing the slap, followed by the chaos when Williams coughed. Comment sections exploded. "This is like something from a movie. That Maid is a hero. How can a wife plan to bury her husband alive?" Cynthia's face appeared on every blog. Her name trended for all the wrong reasons. At her sister's house across town, Cynthia sat staring at her phone, scrolling through hundreds of hateful comments. "Monster wife. Gold digger. She wanted the money, not the man." Her hands trembled as she threw the phone aside. "They don't know the full story," she whispered. But the truth was, deep down she knew they were right. 3 days later, the courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. The air smelled of paper and perfume, tension and fear. Cynthia sat beside her lawyer, face pale, eyes swollen from sleepless nights. Dr. Benson was there too, in handcuffs, his head hanging low. When Williams entered with Namdi and Amaka, a hush fell over the room. He looked stronger now, still pale, but walking tall in his dark blue kaftan. Amaka followed quietly behind, dressed neatly in a black gown, her hair tied back. The judge, a woman with glasses perched low on her nose, tapped her gavel. Case number 0142, Williams Group versus Cynthia Williams and Dr. Jeremy Benson. Williams stood. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "My lord, I am not here today to seek revenge. I'm here to seek justice and truth." He paused, his gaze landing briefly on Cynthia, who looked away. "I was declared dead while still alive," he continued. "My wife and our family doctor conspired to take my properties, my company, and my life." The court murmured. Cameras clicked. Cynthia's lawyer rose. Objection, my lord. There is no evidence that my client intended harm. But Williams raised a file from the table. These are the documents she tried to steal. All signed, all stamped. Found in her clutch the very morning she planned to bury me. The judge leaned forward, scanning the papers. Her expression hardened. Proceed. Dr. Benson was called to the stand next. His voice trembled as he spoke. It was Cynthia's idea at first, he said. She said Williams had become distant. She wanted to secure her future. I only followed her instructions. Cynthia gasped. Liar, you told me he was gone. You said it was safe. The judge banged her gavel. Order in the court. Williams's eyes never left her. You both betrayed not just me, but everything I built. After hours of arguments, the judge finally asked Williams to make his final statement. He stood again, his hand resting on the table for balance. My lord, he began softly, I ask the court not to sentence them to prison. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Even Cynthia's lawyer looked stunned. Williams continued, I do not wish to see them jailed. I only ask for 3 things. 1. That this marriage be dissolved. 2. That Cynthia never come near me or my company again. 3. That Dr. Benson's medical license be revoked for the safety of others. The judge studied him for a long moment, then nodded. The court grants your request. She turned to Cynthia. Your marriage is hereby dissolved. You will receive no inheritance, no property, and no share in your husband's company. Cynthia broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Please, don't do this, Williams, I'm sorry. But Williams's face was unreadable. You already did this to yourself, he said quietly. As officers led Dr. Benson away, Cynthia's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the courtroom floor, crying so hard that even the reporters turned away. Amaka, watching from the back, felt something ache in her chest. She didn't hate Cynthia. She only felt pity for a woman who traded love for greed and lost both. Days passed. The mansion felt lighter, warmer. The open windows were now closed, and sunlight streamed gently through the curtains. Williams had returned to his routine, but something had changed in him. He smiled more often now, even if his smiles carried a hint of sadness. Amaka was packing her few belongings when he walked into the hallway. Are you leaving already? He asked. She nodded. You said I should start school, sir. The University of Lagos sent my admission letter. Williams smiled faintly. That was fast. She hesitated. Sir, I can't repay you for everything you've done. He shook his head. You already did, Amaka. You gave me back my life. She lowered her gaze, her throat tightening. I was just doing what you told me. He chuckled softly. Then maybe I should start taking my own advice. As she turned to leave, he called her name again. Amaka. She looked back. He held out a small envelope. Take this. It's your first-year tuition and a little extra to help you settle in. Her eyes widened. Sir, I can't. You can, he interrupted. And when you graduate, come work for me. Williams' group needs people who are loyal, not just smart. Tears welled in her eyes as she took the envelope with both hands. Thank you, sir. He smiled. The kind of smile that could warm the coldest morning. Now go chase your dream. That night, as Amaka prepared to leave for school the next day, William stood on the balcony alone. The wind was cool and calm, carrying the faint sounds of Lagos nightlife. He thought of Cynthia, the woman he had once loved so deeply. Somewhere out there, she was facing the ruin of her choices. And though she had tried to destroy him, he still felt something he couldn't quite name. Not love, not anger, just sorrow. He whispered to the night, May you find peace, Cynthia. From her small rented room in the outskirts of the city, Cynthia sat by her window, staring at the same moon. The light reflected in her tear-streaked eyes as she whispered back, And may you never remember me again. Neither knew that their paths were far from finished. Fate still had one last twist to write a moment that would bring forgiveness where there was once betrayal. The sun rose gently over Lagos, painting the sky in strokes of gold and pink. At the Williams mansion, the air finally smelled of peace. The staff moved quietly, whispering about their boss, who had come back from the dead, and the maid who saved him with a single slap. Amaka's small suitcase sat by the door. Today, she would leave for the University of Lagos to begin her studies in computer science. The same girl who once swept the mansion's marble floors would now walk into a lecture hall with hope in her eyes. Williams stood in the doorway, watching her zip up her bag. "Are you ready?" he asked, smiling faintly. Amaka nodded. "Yes, sir. But it feels strange leaving this place. It was my home." "It will always be your home," he replied. "You may be going to school, but this house will always have a room for you." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "I'll miss everyone here." Williams handed her a small brown envelope. "This is a little extra for your hostel and books. Don't refuse it." "Sir, you've already done too much," she protested softly. "I haven't done enough," he said. "You gave me a second chance at life, Amaka. I'm only giving you the same." Her voice trembled. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already have," he said, "by proving that kindness can come from the most unexpected places." The black SUV rolled out of the mansion's gate. Amaka sat in the back seat beside her small bag, staring at the city through the window. The breeze ruffled her hair, carrying with it memories of the day she arrived at the mansion, tired, hungry, and desperate for work. Now she was leaving as a young woman, filled with dreams. Williams watched from the balcony as the car disappeared around the bend. His heart swelled with pride and something else he couldn't quite name. He turned away before the feeling could sink too deep. Back inside, Nanamdi approached him. "You're quiet this morning," he said. Williams sighed. "She reminds me of myself when I was young, hungry for more, but never bitter about what life took." Namdi smiled. "You've changed, brother. Maybe I almost dying was what it took," Williams said softly. Across the city, in a small, dimly lit room, Cynthia sat on the edge of her bed. The curtains were drawn tight. The only sound was the slow ticking of an old wall clock. She had sold her jewelry, her car, and even her wedding rings to survive. Nobody wanted to hire the woman whose face had been plastered across blogs for weeks under the headline, "Wife plots to bury billionaire alive." Her family had abandoned her. Her friends blocked her number. She was alone, completely alone. The floor was littered with unpaid bills. On the nightstand sat an empty bottle of sleeping pills. Cynthia held her head in her hands. Why did I listen to him? Why did I open that window? Her voice cracked. I had everything. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She remembered the day Williams first brought her to that mansion, how proud she had been, how loved she felt. Somewhere along the line, greed had eaten away that love until all that was left was emptiness. She looked around the small room, the peeling paint, the broken mirror, and the single flickering bulb. Maybe the world would be better without me, she whispered. She reached for the empty pill bottle. Her neighbors heard the sound first, a faint thud followed by the crash of glass. When they broke down the door, they found Cynthia on the floor, pale and trembling. God, she's poisoned herself, one shouted. They rushed her to a nearby hospital. The doctors worked quickly, pumping her stomach, fighting to save her life. When the nurse asked for payment, the neighbors looked helpless. We don't have money, one said softly. She's alone, but word travels fast in Lagos. Before night fell, the news reached the one man who had every reason to turn his back on her, Williams. He was sitting in his study, reviewing company files when his phone rang. Sir, said his driver, we just heard Madam Cynthia is in the hospital. She tried to take her life. Williams froze. The pen dropped from his hand. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he stood. Which hospital? Cynthia lay weak in a hospital bed, a drip line running into her arm. Her face was pale, her lips dry, her eyes closed. When the door opened, she stirred slightly. The nurse whispered, You have a visitor. When she turned her head, she saw him, Williams, standing tall in a white traditional outfit, his expression calm but unreadable. Cynthia blinked as tears welled in her eyes. You came? He stepped closer. I came because life is worth more than revenge. Her lips trembled. Why? After everything I did to you, why would you still help me? Williams's eyes softened. Because if I don't show you kindness, then I've learned nothing from what happened. Cynthia broke into tears. I don't deserve it. Maybe not, he said gently. But sometimes mercy isn't about who deserves it, it's about who needs it. She sobbed quietly, covering her face. I was blinded by greed. I thought love wasn't enough anymore. I thought money could fill the emptiness. He sighed. Money can build walls, Cynthia, but it can't build peace. She nodded weakly. I wanted to apologize, before it was too late. You have, he said, and you'll live to do more than that. Before he left, he pulled out an envelope from his pocket and placed it on the bedside table. 5 million naira, he said softly. Start a new life. Do something good with it. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You're giving me money? After everything? He smiled faintly. Consider it my forgiveness. Cynthia clutched the envelope to her chest, weeping uncontrollably. I'll never forget this, Williams. Thank you for giving me a second chance. He nodded slowly. We all need one. As he turned to leave, she whispered, You were always a better person than I was. Williams paused at the door, his back to her. No, he said quietly. I just had someone to remind me what kindness means. That night, Williams sat alone in his car outside the hospital. The city lights blinked in the distance. For the first time in weeks, he felt a strange calm, a peace that came from forgiveness. He thought of Amaka, now in her hostel, unpacking her books, smiling at her new life. And he thought of Cynthia, lying in that hospital bed, clutching an envelope that symbolized mercy instead of hate. He whispered to himself, maybe this is what life wanted from me. To learn that love and forgiveness are the greatest victories. As his car pulled away, a soft drizzle began to fall, washing the streets clean. Somewhere far away, Cynthia looked out her window, whispering through tears, Thank you for saving me again. And at the University of Lagos, Amaka looked up at the same sky, whispering a silent prayer of gratitude for the man who changed her life forever. But destiny wasn't done weaving their stories together, because life had one more surprise waiting just around the corner. 3 years later, Amaka graduated as the best software engineer. Ans started working in Williams' group. The mansion that once echoed with grief now overflowed with laughter and warmth. The Harmattan wind had come again, brushing through the palms that framed the gate of Williams' estate. But this time, the cold didn't bring fear. It brought memory. Inside, a young woman walked confidently down the marble hallway. Her black heels clicked with purpose. She wore a smart navy blue suit, her ID card swinging lightly from her neck. The name printed on it read, Amaka Williams Group, software engineer. Her eyes glowed with quiet pride. Her journey from a homeless maid to a respected software engineer was more than just success. It was a story of faith, kindness, and destiny. She knocked gently on the office door before entering. Sir? Williams looked up from behind his desk. His eyes still held that calm strength. When he saw her, his expression softened into a smile. Amaka, he said warmly. You're early. I've always been early, sir, she replied playfully. He chuckled. That's true. I remember the day you came to the mansion at dawn, asking for work. You've been early ever since. Amaka smiled shyly. You gave me a home when no one would. And you gave me back my life, he said, his gaze steady. We both saved each other. The company was hosting its annual Thanksgiving gala that evening 3 years since the day Williams had returned from what everyone once believed was death. The theme this year was second chances. When Amaka entered the grand ballroom later that evening, applause followed her. Her story had become a legend among employees, the maid who slapped her boss back to life. She blushed as people whispered and smiled in admiration. Williams stood on the stage, wearing a tailored white agbada with a red cap. His voice carried easily across the hall. 3 years ago, I lay lifeless on a table, he began. The world thought I was gone. But one young woman, one whose name was never on any board or payroll, refused to believe it. She acted not out of fear, but out of faith. And because of her, I stand before you today. The crowd erupted in applause. Amaka lowered her gaze, tears welling. Williams continued, This company has achieved much since then. But our greatest success isn't in profits, it's in people. The ones who remind us that loyalty, compassion, and courage still matter. He gestured toward Amaka. To Amaka, my miracle. The audience rose to their feet. The sound of clapping filled the hall like thunder. Amaka wiped her tears, trying to hide her face as cameras flashed. The next day, as Williams was leaving the office, his secretary approached him. Sir, there's someone waiting outside. She says she needs to speak with you urgently. In Mosing, in the comms coded. Williams frowned slightly. Who is it? She says her name is Cynthia. He froze. The world seemed to quiet for a moment. Send her in, he said finally. When Cynthia entered, she was almost unrecognizable. She wore a simple grey dress, her once perfectly styled hair now short and plain. But her eyes, those eyes still held the same sharpness, though softened by regret. "Williams," she began softly, "thank you for seeing me." He nodded. "Sit." She hesitated. "I didn't come to ask for anything. I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" he asked. "For saving my life. Again," she said, her voice trembling. "The money you left me, I used it to start a small catering business. It's doing well now. I've paid my debts, and I found God again." Williams studied her carefully. She looked older, humbler, human. "I'm glad you found peace," he said sincerely. Cynthia blinked back tears. "I still live with the guilt of what I did. Every night I remember that cold morning, the casket, and how close I came to burying you alive. I can never erase that." "You don't need to," he said quietly. "You just have to live differently from now on." She nodded. "I heard Amaka works here now. I'm happy for her. She deserved everything good that's come to her." A brief silence passed between them, one that felt strangely like closure. "Goodbye, Williams," she said finally, standing. As she reached the door, he called out, "Cynthia." She turned. "I forgave you long ago," he said simply. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. "That's why you're the man I'll never stop praying for." And then she left quietly, like the wind. Weeks later, the company courtyard glowed with fairy lights for another celebration this time, a small, private one. Williams had invited a few close friends and employees for dinner. Amaka was there, wearing a flowing silver gown that shimmered under the lights. She had no idea the evening would change her life forever. Williams stood beside her, smiling. "You've grown into a remarkable woman, Amaka. The little girl I once found crying outside the gate now inspires an entire generation." She laughed lightly. "I couldn't have done it without you, sir." He turned serious. "You still call me sir, even now." She blushed. "It's a habit. Maybe it's time to change that," he said. Before she could respond, Williams dropped to one knee. Gasps filled the air. Amaka froze, eyes wide, her heart pounding in her chest. "3 years ago," he said, voice full of emotion, "you gave me my life back with a slap. But every day since, you've given me something even greater: peace, laughter, and purpose. Amaka, will you marry me?" Tears poured down her cheeks. Her hands covered her mouth as the crowd held their breath. Then she knelt down beside him and whispered, "Yes. 1,000 times, yes." The crowd erupted in cheers as he slipped a ring onto her finger. Williams pulled her into a warm embrace, both of them crying and laughing at once. From the corner of the courtyard, Namdi clapped loudly, shouting, "Finally!" The air was filled with joy, with the sound of second chances turning into forever. 4 months later, inside a well-decorated wedding hall, Amaka walked down the aisle in a white gown. Her veil shimmered like morning dew. Williams stood waiting for her, dressed in a cream agbada, his smile wide and sincere. The crowd of guests rose, clapping softly as she approached. Among them sat a woman in the last row, Cynthia. Her face was wet with tears, but she smiled quietly, whispering a prayer for them both. When the vows were said and the rings exchanged, Williams looked at Amaka with eyes full of gratitude. "You saved me once, Amaka," he said softly. "But in truth, you've been saving me every day since." She smiled through tears. "And you gave me the life I never dreamed I could have." The crowd cheered as they sealed their vows with a kiss. The sound of drums and laughter filled the air. The mansion that once smelled of sorrow now overflowed with the scent of flowers, love, and hope. Later that night, under the stars, Williams and Amaka stood on the balcony. She leaned her head on his shoulder and he wrapped an arm around her waist. "Do you ever think about that day?" she asked quietly. "The day you slapped me back to life?" he said, laughing softly. "Every day. It reminds me that sometimes life chooses the most unexpected people to perform miracles." Amaka smiled, looking at the moon. "And what if it happens again?" He grinned. "Then I'll trust you to bring me back, just maybe not so hard next time." She laughed, and the sound filled the night. A year later, they welcomed a baby boy named Jerry. And as Williams held the child in his arms, he whispered, "You're the proof that love truly brings life." The story that began with death ended with new beginnings. And every harmattan since then, when the cold breeze brushed against their windows, Amaka would close them gently, smile, and whisper, "Not today, harmattan, he's alive. What is your view about this story?" If you were in Williams's shoes, would you have forgiven Cynthia despite what she did? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.